President Tang Ling Chai, fellow trustee, Professor Wang Keng Wu, professors, donors, and I want to recognize in particular President and members of the Singapore Buddhist Lodge who have been a stalwart supporter of the Nalanda Library Fund. Friends, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the trustees of the Singapore Nalanda University Fund, I thank NUS for agreeing to the establishment of a Nalanda Professorship for India-China Studies. I thank ARI and LKY School of Public Policy for their help in fleshing out the proposal. And I want to thank the Secretary of the Fund, Chu Keng Chuan, Len Wei King, and a little team in Mothership who provided secretarial support and arranged for the transfer of the monies, which was not an entirely simple matter. This professorship furthers an unstated mission of the new Nalanda University in Bihar. When it was conceptualized by the Nalanda Mentor Group, which was formed in 2007 under Professor Amartya Sen's leadership. That mission is for the university to build a bridge of friendship between India and China. The amount of money donated by Singapore's Nalanda Library Fund to establish the Nalanda Professorship in India-China Studies is $3 million in cash and fixed deposit. The fund was originally intended to help fund the Nalanda University Library at its new campus in Rajgir, Bihar, near the site of the old Nalanda Mahavihara. The governing board of the university, chaired by its founding chancellor, Amartya Sen, accepted the offer of Singapore donors to give up to Singapore $10 million to build a library at the new campus. The board agreed that Singapore architects would design the library subject to board approval of the design. And the approval of the detailed design was formally given by the governing board at its meeting in February 2016 when I was the chancellor. I, as a member first of the Nalanda Mentor Group and then of the governing board, canvassed support among Singaporeans, especially members of the Buddhist community. And Lim Bok Guan, who was at that time the president of the Singapore Buddhist Lodge, was an anchor and gave me much encouragement. We were more than halfway towards reaching that target of $10 million. In 2015, I took over from Amartya Sen as the second chancellor and convened the first convocation of graduating students after over 800 years. It was at the end of the 12th century that the old Nalanda University was destroyed by Afghan invaders. Unfortunately, not being an Indian citizen, I felt compelled to resign in November 2016 when appointments to the university became politicized. As a result, some pledges of donation to the library fund dropped off. After the disbursement of almost $700,000 in architectural and consultancy fees for the design of the library, we had a little over $3 million in the kitty. I was surprised to discover by chance in 2021 that the governing board under the third chancellor decided to change the design of the library without consulting the Singapore donors. This was a breach of the agreement between the university and the Singapore donors. This meant that the money put into the detailed design of the library was completely wasted, about close to $700,000. Since then, the trustees of the Singapore Nalanda University Fund have repeatedly lodged claims to the Nalanda University for compensation, but have yet to receive a satisfactory reply. The trustees then decided that the remainder of the fund would be used to establish the professorship that we are happily launching today. And when I disclosed this intention to Amartya Sen in Harvard last June, he was delighted. and immediately shook my hand. The trustees have obtained the agreement of all the donors to the fund, except for a few anonymous minor donors, to transfer the remaining money to the professorship, which will be called the Nalanda Professorship for India-China Studies. They agree with the purposes and objectives of the professorship. On behalf of the trustees, I thank all of them for their understanding and their support. The trustees have expressed a wish to NUS that one of the key tasks of the Nalanda professor in India-China Studies will be to publish an encyclopedia of India-China interactions and exchanges over the centuries in different domains. This should be a project to be undertaken over many years. What Joseph Needham did for the multi-volume Science and Civilization in China is an inspiration. For each volume, scholars should be convened to write chapters. Each volume can be a separate fundraising effort. I remember in the case of Science and Civilization, receiving a copy of the thick volume on Chinese ceramics from Dr. Lee Seng-Ti, who was a sponsor of that volume. For India-China Studies, Buddhism is an obvious area deserving of a few volumes. There could be one on mathematics and another on agriculture. Indian and Chinese influences and exchanges in the realms of martial arts, literature, art, could be other topics covered by this subject. Over time, a valuable reference collection will be built up to support the development of the field of India-China studies. When scholars, not only from India and China, but from other countries as well, undertake collaborative research and meet to discuss how two great civilizations have learned and benefited from each other, mutual understanding, respect, and goodwill will naturally accumulate. The way to the future is then obvious, which must be to continue cooperating, benefiting each other, and building capacity among young students and emerging scholars. And for the convening of such scholarship, I think there's no better place than Singapore, and no place better in Singapore than NUS, and no place better than NUS and ARI. Because we are omnidirectional, we are neutral, we are friendly to all, and we respect scholarship in itself and not for its political implications. In the coming decades, peace in Asia and beyond depends critically on good relations between India and China. In Southeast Asia, to use Professor Wang's metaphor, where the mandalas of China and India overlap, and to varying degrees in each of the 10 countries, we have been an inseparable part of this civilizational encounter across centuries. In these and other ways, the Nalanda Professorship in India-China Studies can make a modest but a significant contribution to the region and the world. Right now, it would appear as if the world is in upheaval, and every day we read of some new statement or policy by Donald Trump and scary reactions. There's also the possibility of war over Iran, where the Americans have massed, I think, over 300,000 GIs around Iran. Aircraft carriers are steaming that direction. Netanyahu is in DC, no doubt to egg Trump on. But Trump's instincts are to threaten, but not to go to war. But we can't be sure that there won't be war. I would say there's a finite possibility. Not 50%, but maybe 10, 20%. Then there are trade wars. And with tariffs being met by counter-tariff, we may see significant decoupling. How China responds will be interesting. I gave an written interview 2 days ago to Beijing Daily, and I said China should act in the opposite direction, which is to open up. Whether RCEP, maybe join the CPTPP, but open up, because it is the biggest consumer market in the world and will continue to grow. And by reacting in this way, it will force the Americans, after a while, to alter position. But this is a challenging period. I see them as birth pangs to the crystallization, to the birth of a multipolar world whose rough shape we can discern, but whose precise shape we do not know. But we can be sure that this is a prolonged delivery of the future, which Trump is fast-forwarding. So amidst all this, we need calm, Buddhist calm inside. We need to recall what Kipling said in this famous poem, If, when everything is confusion around you, have a fixed core. And that core must be founded on knowledge, a knowledge of history, of geography, of culture. And the accumulation of that knowledge is critical to the future. If in this century we can maintain the peace in this region, India, Southeast Asia, China, which together make up more than half the world, and right now the more promising half the world, the prospects for a generational pole vault into the first world for large parts of the region becomes entirely possible. The future does not happen by itself. We have to work to make it happen. And little things have got to be done. And these little things are more important than we think. And it includes this professorship, which we are launching today. Thank you.